Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Influencer Show, where I interview people who can help influence the way you live life in a number of ways. I'm your host, Dean Seddon, and today we have a very special guest with us, Dean Seddon. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them a bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dean Seddon. I help people understand how they can market and sell themselves better, whether that's a business or them as a person. And it all starts with how they think about things, and then they go into action. How's that?
That's absolutely great. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So now I'd like you to share with the listeners why you do what you do.
Let me give you the violin story, because the violin story is kind of something that kind of sits with me all the time. So when I was growing up, I came from a very working class background, and as I started a business, what I found was that because I had a good upbringing and everything, so there was nothing wrong with it in that sense, but because of the way I grew up and the kind of social class I grew up, I couldn't see how I could live a different life than the rest of my family. And so part of my journey in life has been figuring out that the things I think are true aren't, if that makes sense.
Yes,
so that's kind of where I've come from.
Certainly. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope you listeners have gained so much from Dean so far. And now I'd like to ask you, what would you say has been the biggest influence on you that you wish you had known sooner?
Oh, where do you start with that? You're asking really big questions here. Number one, we'll deal with money. So number one, I had a belief that there wasn't enough money. Yeah. So I grew up with that. My dad was a coal miner. So he worked down the mines, did the strikes and all that kind of stuff in the 80s. So we went through a period where we had no money, and that kind of embedded into me. And for most of my life, I lived thinking there was a shortage of money. So that was a big one. And then the biggest one of all was worrying about what people think. When you think about it, and I had this in school, you always wanted to kind of conform, and you always wanted to be liked. And you keep doing that in adulthood. And then you suddenly realize, actually, to do well in life, you only need a small group of people to really love what you do.
Yes.
And the rest, I don't mean the rest can it doesn't matter what they think, but if you've got people who really love what you do, that's all you need to worry about. Yeah. So it was that kind of people and money thing that really kind of was things I wish I knew when I was 20 years ago.
I think that's one thing that, as a result of the lockdown, people can then install into their kids, because now that they're all at home, they can then put all those positive beliefs and systems in place so that you then grow up with a positive and open mindset as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, looking back, it's kind of something that just happens to you.
Yeah.
And you kind of it just trickles down through the generations. But if you can break that early on in life, you can do really, really well.
Totally, yes. I 100% agree with that. So how do you prefer to influence others to change the way they live life for the better?
Throwing these deep questions at me again. How do I am terrible for wanting to just help people. So somebody will message me on LinkedIn, or somebody will message me on social media and say, hey, how can I do this? And some of the people who work in my business say I shouldn't do this so much, but I will literally just help anybody, because I know how difficult it is to find things out, and having lots of conflicting information. So I just kind of go, if I know something, I'll share it. So I kind of give a lot away, because I shouldn't really. I'd probably be a millionaire if I gave everything away. if I didn't give everything away. But I just like to share information. If I learn something, I give it away.
That's
Does that kind of answer
yeah.
the question, hopefully?
Yes, thank you. Yes, definitely. And that's one thing that I'm also passionate about. Like, for example, although we've done all these amazing things, but I also love to give back and do like community workshops, just to give a sense of like an open view for those to have a chance to achieve their dreams in a way. Yeah. So what would you say people should do to stay motivated during moments of crisis like now as well?
I think you have to focus on your goals, because it's very easy to get lost in the news and get lost in the noise. If you watch the news every day, you'd think there's no life after this, everything's over.
Yeah.
But humans have a way to adapt. You can adapt, I can adapt, the world can adapt, and we will. But you have to go, well, I'm not going to be swayed by all the mess that's going on, the confusion and this, and just go, I'm just going to plow through and keep focused. And you have to kind of switch off from some of this stuff. You have to really lock it off and go, I'm not going to be influenced by it.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd like to ask you, what is your passion and end goals?
Oh, do you know what I'd really love? Yeah. When you go onto social media and you see all these ads from people who are with a laptop on a beach making money whilst they sleep.
Yes, definitely.
I'd love that to be true. I'd really love it to be true. It isn't true, by the way. Most of the people, they're just exploit. If it isn't that, I'd really love to be able to travel more. I love traveling. I love kind of jumping on a plane and going places. And last year, I did a lot of that. Not to very warm places, but I love traveling, so I'd want to do more of that. So that's for me. Notice there's no real money goal. I just want to be able to travel. But yeah, if I can't travel, it's the laptop lifestyle on a beach earning this.
Yeah. So if you had a megaphone and you could say one thing to the world that would have a lasting influence on the world, what would it be and why?
Oh wow. What would I say to the world? Can I say 3 things?
Yes, that's fine.
Right. Number 1, stop being cruel on social media. Number 2, encourage other people who have an idea or dream. And I know that sounds cheesy, but sometimes you just need people to say, that's a great idea, go for it.
Definitely.
And then the other one is, don't believe everything you think about yourself and the world.
those are very powerful. And especially for those people out there who procrastinate a lot, that is something that could help them to achieve more.
Yeah. No, they're my things, I think. Social media is an interesting place. It's great. I love social media, but it has its dark side, of people who suddenly just forget that there's human beings involved here and just say whatever they think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, I'd like to ask you, what advice would you give to those who may have had their very own £1 million idea at a time like this?
Ooh. So you've got a £1 million idea in the middle of lockdown. Yeah. What I would do is, there's limited things you can do to kind of initiate it now, but maybe you've had the light bulb moment now.
Yeah.
I would start to do as much market research about this idea as possible. So I would start to look at who are the key people who can make this idea happen. And I shared something on LinkedIn about this morning. So Bill Gates approached 1,200 people to get his investment to start Microsoft. 1,200 people. But in the end, it came down to 11 people that made it happen. Who were those 11 people? who are that crowd that you need for this to take off? Because that's really, really important in understanding who can make this a success. There's a graph of how people adopt new ideas and new technologies. And in that scenario, it would be find out who your early adopters would be. Who would be the people who would love what you've got to say and be your champions? Because you want to go to them you want to go to the people who love it. So who would they be? And have that all written down and documented so you know exactly when we come out of this, who you need to talk to and how to make the idea happen for them people that will really want to kind of snap your idea off your hands.
That is amazing. I'm absolutely loving your answers. They're short and concise. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. You guys are grabbing loads of golden nuggets from everything that Dean Seddon had to say. And now moving on to the next question, I'd like to ask, what is the biggest issue or problem that you are aiming to solve as an influencer in your niche?
You're really good at these tough questions, you know. You're really good. You didn't even give me a warning they were going to be this tough. So I think what I want to solve is when you start a business, you get going and you kind of do everything that you need to do to just get it going, making some money. What do they call it now? Hustling. Yeah. You do the hustle to get everything going. But then you reach a point where you can't keep hustling that same way because now you've got employees and all that kind of stuff. And you have to kind of drive the business. And that's where it gets a bit wishy-washy for people. That's where it gets a bit difficult and confusing because they've got all these other things going on. So what I want to be doing is helping people go, how do that question of, I just want to keep growing. I want to, but we've kind of hit a brick wall. We can't seem to get further than this. Is say to them, let's just unpick things. Let's have a look at things and let's find out how you can get over that wall. And that could be like, you know, a turnover barrier. You know, they've hit maybe 100,000, 500,000 and can't get to the next stage. Or it could be something as simple as they're running a bigger business like it's just them.
Yes.
Yeah. So you now have a £500,000 turnover business, but actually you're still thinking like it's you working out the boot of your car kind of thing.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. So for those of you who may not have understood what Dean was saying there, what he aims to do is get people from, so for example, let's say you have a business and you've hit that so-called limit and you've gone to a plateau. He simply helps you to break through that and simply achieve more. So what would you say was that pivotal point along your journey and what did it teach you?
Okay. So this is something that happened relatively recently. So for a lot of my business experience, I've had someone or something around me as kind of like a crutch. Yeah. So I would have a business partner or I'd be working with an organization in a particular way that meant that I didn't have to take 110% responsibility for everything. So I always shared the responsibility. And I changed that a few years ago, or that changed a few years ago to the point where I'm responsible for everything, but it's an actually incredibly liberating feeling that actually I'm responsible for this. I'm the master of my own destiny.
Yeah.
We live or die by my ability. And I have a very sarcastic, when I face challenges, and every business goes through these, but we had one a number of years ago where it was like do or die. And it was like, this will either kill us or make us. And very, very few times do you have them. If you have them all the time, you've got a problem, but every so often you do have them. And I had one, and I made this decision. I said, either I have confidence that I can do this and we will pull this off, or I go get a job.
Mm.
And when I put those two things together, there's nothing wrong with having a job, but because you get into that business entrepreneurial lifestyle, it's very hard. You become unemployable.
Mm.
Yeah. Because suddenly you have to follow instructions. So once you've had a taste of running your own business, it's very hard to go back.
Yes, definitely.
So I made this choice and said, if I can't do this, and if I can't pull this off, I have to get a job. And you'd be surprised how motivated I was when I realized that if I didn't do it, I'd be stacking shelves or taking orders from somebody else.
Mm. That's very powerful indeed. I'd like you to share with the listeners what are your top 3 lessons you have learned along your journey, and how they could then use that to influence them and help them from making those mistakes.
Okay. So, really important one. And I learned this from somebody else, so it's not my own wisdom here or anything. I learned this from a guy called Paul Scanlon, and maybe 15 years ago, and I learned this about this, but it's taken me probably 15 years to get my head around it. And it is this, that relationships are spatial. So you go, well, what the hell does it want? Because this is quite an important one. It's quite long-winded. So what it means is that, let's say we're best friends and you come up with an amazing business idea.
Yeah.
So you say, hey, this would be a great business idea. Would you come and be my business partner? And I'm your friend. So I go, yeah, I'd love to be your friend in business. And what happens is I view our friendship as a friendship. You want to view it as a business partnership.
Mm.
Now, I might agree to come into business partnership with you, but what it really means is I still see this as we're friends together doing something. You see this as business now. And what happens is that we put people in our lives in the wrong places.
Definitely.
And then we get upset when they let us down. And they let us down because, they didn't do thing, or they weren't as interested in our business or this or that as the other, as everybody else. And what we fail to understand is we misplace them in our relationships.
Yeah.
So we could have a really good friend who's a great friend, and then when we go into business with them, they're not a great business partner. So you have to understand the nature of your relationships with people to avoid you putting somebody in the wrong place and then having the disappointment or the hurt or the whatever from you putting them in a place that they were never designed to be.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get my head around it, but that's a really important one. And the obvious one, I'll give you a really obvious one, cash flow. Cash flow in anything, in personal life, in business, cash flow, in some senses, cash flow matters more than profit and loss. Yeah. If you run out of cash, it's a game over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're two. What could I? Got to think. Think of one more. Here's another one. So, again, I learned this from somebody else. There's the right way, there's the wrong way, and there's the other way. And there's the right way, but sometimes the right way isn't possible. Yeah. Sometimes the perfect solution is never available, but because of money, capability, whatever. The wrong way is never a good way because you break the law, cheat, steal. So forget that one. But there's another way, which is not wrong, but it's not perfect either.
Yes.
And I've always learned that I used to think about it as the right and the wrong way, and you'd struggle to do the right way, but you definitely wouldn't do the wrong way. There's another way. And that stuck with me as well. There's always another way. There's the right way, the wrong way, and the other way.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's really powerful. So if you had to be another person for one day, who would it be and why?
Oh, who would it be and why? I would love to be. I would love to be. Oh, I'm going to do an easy one here. I'd love to be kind of something like President of the United States,
Uh,
but not for the reason you might think, because apparently the White House is pretty boring. It's to see how government really works. Like at the moment, we're going through lockdown, and obviously a lot of people are dying and getting sick because of coronavirus. I'd love to see and understand how people are making decisions about people's everyday lives. Because we hear a lot about, the politicians don't care and all this kind of stuff. But I'd love to see how difficult it really is, because every decision that a politician makes, there's winners and losers. It doesn't matter what decision you make, somebody wins and somebody loses. And they have to make those decisions every single day. And I'd love to know how they reconcile and figure all of that out. I also think that there's probably a better way of doing it, but I would say that because I don't do that job. So I'd love to be like a prime minister or a president, just to see how
the inside. Yeah.
How easy or hard it is to make those choices.
That'd actually be amazing.
Yeah, with a bowling alley in your house, it'd be pretty cool.
So now I'd like to ask you, what are your views on the word legacy and what legacy you'd like to leave?
Sorry, I missed that question then. So could you say that one again for me?
Okay, sure. So what are your views on the word legacy and what legacy would you like to leave?
Legacy. I don't think you can know what your legacy will be until you won't know what your legacy will be. And as much as you try to engineer, like, this is what you're going to be remembered for, or this is the gift or lasting impact you had, history writes that. So you can't really set it up or plan for it. I mean, if you've got $1 billion and you give it all away, then you can, but for ordinary folk, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So what would I like to be remembered for? What contribution would I like to have? I would like to think that because of my work, I've helped somebody else achieve more. And I'd love to do that on a large scale. So I'd love to be able to kind of have my last breath being satisfied that I've helped other people do better than I did. So coming from a very working class background, I'd love to see more people who are in a working class background
get the transition,
move beyond that.
Yeah.
I'd really love that, both in the mind and their quality of life. I'd love that. I'm not sure how I'll do it, but if I can do that for a large group of people, I'm happy.
That is amazing. That is something, yeah. So now I'd like to ask you, is there anything that you've done in the past and now looking back on it, you may have wished you've done differently or maybe even done sooner?
We'd be here all afternoon if I told you all the things I wish I'd done differently. Sometimes you just do stupid things. And I can remember 20 years and you think, why did I do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's loads of those. I think the one thing I would have done sooner is been a bit more bold in what I was doing. I was too, I've said it before, I was too worried about what other people thought and too looking for somebody else I was looking for permission for stuff as well. I was looking for somebody to say, oh, you can do this. Not, I can just go do it. I can just embark on things myself. So I think I wish I'd been a bit more bold sooner. And as a really interesting saying I learnt 2 days ago, that I think is really important, both for life, for business, for everything. You have to live just south of arrogant. Yeah. And you go, what? South of arrogant? No. Just south of arrogant. Yeah. In that you can't be too timid because people will walk all over you.
Yes.
Or you'll be ignored, or you won't be taken seriously. But if you're arrogant, if you're north of arrogant, people will see that you are a bit up yourself. Yeah. So you have to be confident enough to say, I stand by what I am who I am, this is me, but not be rude with it. So it's be south of arrogant, never north of arrogant. And I thought that was a really interesting saying, because the word arrogant is like, ugh.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to stand up for what you believe and stand up for what you think's right and just go for it.
Definitely. And I think that's one thing that people often misunderstand, really, because they mistake confidence for arrogance, and they try and they often get mixed up between the two. And I think you've definitely hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
So now I'd like you to give your if there's any advice that you would give to your younger self.
Oh. One, don't eat so much fast food takeaway. 2, take more risks than I was too cautious. When you're under 20, you can take as many risks as you want because it doesn't matter. So I tried to play it safe. And then the other one is, and this again is a mindset thing that I think I would tell myself, is there are 2 ways to live out your life. If we use a sport analogy here, so you can play an offensive game or you can play a defensive game. And what that means is that when you're playing in a defensive game, you're playing not to lose. Yes. Yeah? So your best outcome is a draw. But when you're in an offensive game, you're playing to win.
Yeah.
Which means the worst outcome is a draw. So not quite an exact analogy, but sometimes what we do is we approach something with a defensive mentality. How can I not lose doing this? When what you really need is, how can I win doing this? And you might think that's just words, but when it comes to actions, it's a bit like I said just before the call, my just picked his options and his GCSEs are coming up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And think about it like this. I don't know how many of you did these GCSEs because they've all changed now. But when I did my GCSEs, I had the option of 3 different types of exam to sit. There was the lower paper, the middle paper, and the higher paper.
Yeah.
If you're in the lower paper, you can never get an A.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're in the middle paper, you can't get an A. If you're in the higher paper, you can get an A. And there are certain ranges of grades that you can't hit if you're on the wrong paper. And if you're on a defensive game, there are certain things, certain actions you will take that will never allow you to see the full potential of what happens. And it comes down to you're trying to protect yourself from risk over seizing an opportunity. And I was terrible for that. So I would always play a defensive game and then complain when I wanted a win, but actually played a defensive game, which meant I could only draw.
Thank you so much for sharing. And now I'd like you to share with the listeners some advice with those who may be starting something new and are starting to give up.
It's okay. Starting something new and thinking about giving up, or I think you have to ask yourself the question: if you're going to give up, if you're thinking about giving up on something, what's the reason you're giving up? Sometimes it's good to quit things,
Yes.
but that quitting is a choice because you found something better, not quitting because you can't find something better and you're fed up of something. So again, strategic quitting. Yeah. Are you quitting because there's a better opportunity, or are you quitting because you failed to achieve what you wanted? And understanding those two things. If you look at it and go, there's a better way, then it's good to quit. If you've struggled and in a brick wall, you have a challenge to overcome. Yeah. So understanding the difference between strategic quitting is important. So if you're thinking about quitting, are you quitting for something better, or are you quitting because it's too hard? If it's too hard, think of something better or find a way to overcome it. But don't just quit. Don't just go, I'm killing something without having something better. Starting something new. When you start something new, you will doubt yourself, you will question yourself, you will think, am I mad? You will go through all of this stuff, even down to the point where you might think, is this even worth it? But if it's something you really believe in, you just have to work it and work it and work it and work it until you make it happen. I don't pretend to have made massive achievements, but if you look at anybody who's achieved something that's of note, your Steve Jobs, your Henry Ford, your Edison, all these people had to push something and create something against friction, resistance. There was stuff stopping them from making it happen. They had setbacks. Some of them went bankrupt multiple times to get this before they got this idea going. So if you're thinking about starting something, or you're thinking about quitting something, just remember, anything great will be painful to create.
Wow. I 100% agree with what you just said. That's great words of advice. Now, I'd like you to share with the listeners where people can find you if they'd like to find out about any upcoming things that you may have.
So I am on LinkedIn first. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I made the decision a few months ago to make YouTube my second, which is quite a challenge because the stuff I've got to produce to get YouTube to be my second is quite tough. But I've decided YouTube is my second. So if you want to find out more from me, come find me on LinkedIn. But because I'm on YouTube and I'm a bit needy on YouTube at the moment until I've built it up, I will appreciate you more on YouTube.
So you hear that, guys? Be sure to go and check him out on YouTube.
Just being honest, like, you
know. Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining the Influencer Show today. It's been an honor having you here. And also thank you so much to you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And as always, be sure to stay blessed. And if you guys would like to have the chance to be featured on the Influencer Show, be sure to email the email that's going to pop on the screen, and we'll send you across the application process. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Dean, once again for coming on the show today. And that's it from us. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.